If you've watched any video that I've done, you know that I'm a big advocate for rental real estate. It's been a great investment for me, especially in the part of the country where I bought and during the time frame in which I bought. So it's been a good investment for me. But they're about to run me out of the rental real estate game. And who do I mean by they? I'm talking about the taxing authorities like the county and also insurance companies. It's starting to be unbearable the way that the property taxes and the insurance, they just continue to increase and increase. And it would be different if, you bought a piece of property and your taxes were your taxes and, the insurance was the insurance, but that's just simply not it. These things are going to continue to increase for the entire time that I own the property. And if I own the properties forever, then they're just going to keep going up forever. So let's get into what I'm talking about. I went back and looked at my property taxes and insurance expenses for the year from 2021 to 2024. So that's 4 years. And I wanted to see how much my property taxes and insurance had increased over this time, because I know that they are just about to run me up out of this game. And I wanted to see just how much they had increased. So let's look at the property taxes first. As you can see, in 2021, my property taxes for the year totaled $52,000. And then in 2022, I had a big jump all the way up to $63,000. That is a significant jump. And then in 2023, they jumped up to $65,000 for the year. And then in 2024, $66,000 for the year. As you can see, my property taxes over this 4-year period have increased over $13,000. That is significant. And trust me, they have increased for 2025. I just haven't paid them yet. I'm going to be paying them in December, but I've already looked at it and saw that there's been an increase in the property taxes. So again, if this thing continues like this, it's just going to push me out of the game because I have no control over the taxing authorities. And this is the way they generate revenue. And then they're just going to keep coming at people and increasing their property taxes. So let's look at property insurance next. And mind you, I've only had 2 claims in about the past 15 or 16 years. So I've given in a lot of money to insurance companies and I've gotten very little in return. And that's because they continue to increase the premiums each year. And it is getting to be unbearable. And they do it simply because they can. Because a lot of times, if you have a finance property, the bank is going to require that you have the insurance. So it's mandatory that you have this insurance. And then even in those cases where the property is free and clear and doesn't have a mortgage or anything, a lot of us don't have the ability to just self-insure, a bunch of properties, right? I don't have enough money just sitting around where I'm going to, self-insure 15 properties. That's just not going to happen. So you're going to have to pay for insurance to mitigate, this risk, especially when you live in an area where, they may have tornadoes, on a fairly frequent basis. Or, if you live in an area where there's, hurricanes and floods and all this other stuff, you'd be kind of silly to go without insurance. But that doesn't mean that every year you want to be hit over the head with an increased premium, particularly when you are not making any claims whatsoever. Your insurance is just going up, up, and up. So looking at my total insurance premiums from 2021, you can see that they're $14,000. And then you had an increase up to $17,000 in 2022, and then it stayed within that $17,000 range within 2023. But then you had another spike where it went up to $23,000 in 2024. So as you can see, I had an increase of over $8,000 in my property insurance from 2021 to 2024. Guys, that is significant money that is coming out of your bottom line. And again, it's one of those things that makes you want to get out of the rental real estate game altogether. The increases to your property taxes and your insurance are demoralizing because, like I said, you don't control any of this and you know that it's going to go up year after year after year. And I know that there are people out there who are going to say, well, then why don't you just get out of the rental real estate game? Well, there is a reason. And there's one big reason that I decide to stay in the rental real estate game. And that is because inflation will take it away and it will give it. Yes. The same time on my property taxes and insurance is increasing, I'm also getting increased rent due to inflation. So the rents continue to grow. Now, every property is not going to experience the same rental growth that another property does. But in general, yes, my rents have increased over time. And in some cases, I've seen those rents, jump several $100s, over that period of time. So it's able to help offset, the increases in the property taxes and the insurance. So let's look at the rental revenue numbers going all the way back to 2021 through 2024. In 2021, my total revenue from rent was 195,000 and some change, right? And then over a 4-year period, that total revenue increased to $219,000 and some change. That is a $23,000 plus increase to my total rental revenue, which helps me offset the increases in the property taxes and the insurance. This keeps me in the game, and I guess you could say somewhat content or at least satisfied. But it's the other things that I benefit from that really make me say, hey, I'm going to stay in this rental real estate game. And one of those things is the fact that on the income that I have, or the cash flow rather, after all operating expenses and everything is paid, that money that's left over because of depreciation that is more like a paper expense, on your tax return, the money that I get to keep is basically tax free or taxed very little. So imagine at the end of the year, you have $40,000 that is not taxed. I mean, that's like someone out on the street working, a job making $50,000 a year, and you're making this $40,000 a year tax free, and you didn't really have to work for it. You had someone else manage the property and you're just kind of managing them. So to me, that is kind of a hard, thing to pass up and just give away. And the next thing is that imagine that every time your tenant pays rent, they are depositing a certain amount of that rent to paying down the principal balance, which is building equity for you. So within a year's time, all of the rents you collect is basically contributing, about $35,000 of equity to you each year. That's over a 3-year period. You've become $100,000 wealthier, and you didn't have to do anything for it except take the tenant's rent payment and then give it to, the bank. And you've created $100,000 of wealth over a 3-year period. So that's another reason why I stay in the rental real estate game. And then, of course, the next one is that you get the appreciation from the property over all the years, because, again, inflation is going to be your helping hand when it comes to real estate, because as prices get pushed up, then your property becomes more valuable and you become wealthier, based on that value. And you can cash out on that whenever you get ready to sell the property. As I mentioned, it is difficult to stomach each year your property taxes and your insurance increasing, and knowing that it's going to do that for the entirety of the time that you own the property. But this is the life we chose. This is the investment strategy that I chose, and I'm committed to it for the time being. And in the future, I'm going to continue to buy more real estate, and I'll just deal with this unfortunate nagging thorn in my side. That's all I have for you in this video. If you took something of value, please like, please share it with your friends and your family. And in the meantime, take care of yourself, be safe out here in these social media streets.